All right, now we get into the Cowboys pass catchers, and we're going to start by having some fun looking at these Dallas receivers. And we've got a blind resume for you, and Blind Resume is brought to you by Hotwire. Book an expensive hotel for cheap on Hotwire. Download the Hotwire app to book beyond your wildest means. All bookings are final. So we look back at last season, and here are 3 receivers that played with Dak Prescott last year. Remember, 4+ games. I'll give you the 3: wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. Points per target: 2.2 for wide receiver 1, 2.0 for wide receiver 2, 1.6 for wide receiver 3. 2 touchdowns for wide receiver 1, 1 for wide receiver 2, 1 for wide receiver 3. And interestingly enough, target share for wide receiver 1, 16.4%, wide receiver 2, 11%, wide receiver 3, 23.7%.
That's a big one.
That's a big indicator right there. I'm sure you can guess the 3 wide receivers involved. The question is, can you assign them to which order?
Sure.
Who do you think was wide receiver 1?
I can't see it now. Which target share was that? There it is.
16.4%.
That one's CeeDee Lamb.
Okay. Wide receiver 2,
11%. 2 is Michael Gallup. Okay. 3, of course, Amari Cooper.
And we reveal whether he's correct or not. The answer is indeed CeeDee Lamb, Michael Gallup, and Amari Cooper. Well done there by Michael.
I've only been talking about that all offseason, so that was an easy one. Sure. That was one of them rare easy ones. But yeah, I mean, we're going to get into these guys now. We'll talk more about that.
Let's do it individually then.
All right,
so, because I think we really got to start with Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. So Amari Cooper, as you saw, had a massive target share with Dak Prescott, nearly 24%. You've got him at wide receiver 12. I've got him at wide receiver 15. This is a really, really talented guy, Mike. There's a reason why they paid him $110 million on a 5-year deal, did the Dallas Cowboys. Is he the clear-cut number 1 for you, or is there a conversation to be had in this offense?
No, and this is my fault. I just recently made a tweak to these. I actually have Lamb 12, Cooper 15. So
okay,
I actually do have Lamb
I'm glad
ahead.
you did that.
So
and this will make more sense.
My fault.
No, don't worry about
it. Cooper's a little beat up right now. That was part of it, but also, and again, we'll get into Lamb here shortly, but let's focus on Cooper first. When Prescott played last season, he was wide receiver 5, right?
Yeah,
so he was doing a terrific job. Obviously, the targets were there, to your point. But that's notable because he has never finished better than 10th. Never. It's kind of hard to believe. He's never finished better than 10th. With all the pedigree there and all the hype, has never beaten it. Now, he's had a high floor. He's finished top 21 each of the past 3 seasons and all but one of his seasons in the league so far. But the problem really has been targets, right? He's at 130 is the max that he has hit. That's not really what you want from your wide receiver 1. So, to your point, the target share was up a little bit last season. That's good. It's a high-volume offense, which helps. So, he's perhaps getting there, but I'm at 123 right now with a little bit of injury risk in there. It's a little below that number. But with something to keep in mind, and I didn't mention this earlier, I think we should as we get into the wide receivers here, is the level of volume with this offense, right? Because Mike McCarthy had a year off after the Packers, right? And when he came back, he decided, I want a fast-paced, high-volume offense. So if you look at what they did all season, not just with Dak, they were second in pace of play, second in offensive snaps per game. And that's one of the reasons I'm so high on this offense. They're just going to keep moving the ball, and there's going to be more plays, and they're going to get, the NFL averages 64, 65 snaps. They're going to be closer to 70 snaps. And that matters. That's fantasy points. It's catches, it's carries, whatever it is. And I think that's why we're going to feel pretty good about all these guys, to be honest. And that's why you could have 3 receivers on one team ranked high with a top 6 running back.
So along those, I think I agree with that. I agree with everything you say. And by the way, when I said touchdowns in terms of limiting factor for Amari Cooper, he's never had more than 8 in a season, which I don't know if that's a derivative of the and I say relatively small target share for an elite wide receiver, right? Never more than 130. I mean, their wide receivers are going to push for 175, 180. Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins.
What's Thomas's catch record?
149.
449 catches.
149 catches, right?
He's never had more than 130 targets.
Right. So relatively low. But we agree though, like solid wide receiver 2, like maybe even a strong wide receiver 2 is Amari Cooper. And to be honest with you, like depending how my draft shakes out, if he's my top wide receiver in my roster, I'm good with it. I really am.
Yeah,
There's enough depth there, and he's a really, really good player. And assuming that this injury situation, which has limited him a bit during training camp to this point, gets sorted out, all good.
Yeah, generally around round 4 in 12-team leagues. If he falls a little further to round 5, I mean, you're starting to get a pretty nice value there. And again, if you start heavy on running backs and he's your 1 or 2, you're sitting pretty.
So earlier in the show, you mentioned James Robinson and how nobody was talking about James Robinson, at least in the vein of being a top 5 fantasy running back. back, right? Some people were definitely aware of him because after Leonard Fournette got cut, we all sort of felt like somebody had to step up. But, and I could be wrong here, I don't recall many, if any, people saying, hey, James Robinson's he's a top 5 fantasy running back this year. And the reason why, the reason why I mentioned that, Mike, is that I think people are kind of often, like when they are at this point of the year and consulting yourself or Matthew or Daniel or myself or anybody on the show about sleepers or breakouts, they're looking for the equivalent of James Robinson, finishing as a top 5 back. Those, first of all, there's no guarantee that anybody breaks out and goes from an undrafted free agent this year to finishing as a top 5 running back or anything reasonably close. And bear with me here. What I think really is where we can make some hay and be really instructive, though, is not being ahead of the curve on James Robinson, but being ahead of the curve on players like CeeDee Lamb, which is where I want to get to. I've been working on this list. I'm sort of workshopping it. I think it's called My Guys List. It's going to be eventually written on ESPN.com.
Hashtag My Guys.
Part of My Guys. I've got 4 so far. And it's basically just players that I love this year. And I'm not talking about complete unknowns. Sometimes, like T. Higgins is one of the names. Brandon Ayuk, Jonnu Smith. Those are 3. And who else did I have on there? I had one more that I'm forgetting right now.
Is this going to be like your hate-love? Like,
yeah,
that'd be a name for it. Like
prefer, don't prefer.
Matthew, actually, the reason why he's off today is he's doing a My Dudes list.
My Dudes.
For
nice.
.com,
Love it.
Yeah.
So basically just players I have a strong affinity for, feel very, 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 very strongly about this year.
Like it.
I think if I had to make a player the captain of this list, the headliner of this list, it's CeeDee Lamb.
Yep.
And it's incredibly hard to jam him into your top 5 wide receivers in terms of your preseason rankings, simply because of the sample size and pedigree of the guys that are already there. DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, Keenan Allen's, players of that caliber that have been there, done that for so long that it's so hard to say right now that CeeDee Lamb will definitely finish ahead of them or be right in that territory. But I'm having a hard time not wanting to jam CeeDee Lamb further up my rankings. I already have it wide receiver 10. I think the moon is in play for CeeDee Lamb this year. Ridiculous talent. Absurd. Just complete blasphemy. The NFL let him last until the pick 17 last year. The offense, we've already talked about it. Tremendous quarterback, high pace of play. They run a ton of plays. They're going to be bad on defense. They're going to have to throw it. They're going to have games where they're down by 14 at the end of the first quarter. The stars are aligning to me for CeeDee Lamb to be the breakout player of the year in fantasy football, which sounds odd when he was good last year. Thoughts?
I agree. I mean, think about Justin Jefferson and the damage he did last season and was, top 10 wide receiver at times, played like a top 5 wide receiver. CeeDee Lamb, when he played with Dak Prescott, was 11th in fantasy points. That was his first 5 games in the NFL. He was outscoring Jefferson for a part of that. You know what I mean? So
sure.
Dak goes out. He fell to 35 the rest of the season. He still ended up over 1,000 yards field with 5 touchdowns on 85 touches. Really good rookie season for CeeDee Lamb. And to your point, you're talking about some of these guys we rank as perennial top 5 fantasy wide receivers, the highest rated Madden receivers, whatever it is, the best receivers in the league. Think about this. Over the past decade, this is the top 10 rookie wide receivers in terms of receiving yardage.
Okay.
Justin Jefferson, pretty good.
Pretty good.
Odell Beckham,
pretty good.
Michael Thomas, A.J. Brown, A.J. Green, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Mike Evans, CeeDee Lamb, Julio Jones.
So
that's a murderer's row of
right.
Superstar NFL wide receivers. Lamb is in that conversation.
It suggests that a strong rookie season is a good indicator that things could continue, whereas we've seen, unfortunately, several times where a great rookie season at running back could evaporate after 1 or 2 or 3 years. So I can't state it clearly enough. I absolutely love CeeDee Lamb this year. He's the captain of my guys list for this season. That's not a hot take. It's not out of left field. I'm just like, if at the end of the year he finishes a top 5 wide receiver, I will have a bruise on my shin from kicking myself so hard for not having the gumption right now to put him there before the season begins.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.